The Catcher in the Rye is often described as one of the most honest, raw, and important coming of age novels ever written. It's a story about grief, about depression, about growing up, but most importantly, about feeling out of place. But the more I sat with this novel, the more uncomfortable I was. Because this is something that became very apparent to me as I was reading the book, but that I don't see many people talking about. And it's what if Holden, the main character, isn't actually just misunderstood, but he is a deeply unpleasant character who uses his own trauma and his own neglect as a way to excuse his low-key abusive behavior. And also, most importantly, the fact that there are so many people who are defending Holden's behavior just because of his own sensitivities also says way more about us than it says about him as a character. Hello, my gorgeous viewers and readers. Welcome back, or welcome if you're new. I hope your weekend was filled with sunny tennis dates, soft, quiet baking, and the quiet, lingering feeling that the world around you doesn't quite fit you as it should. Today, we're talking about The Catcher in the Rye by Salinger, a book that has been considered for decades the coming-of-age novel. And I understand why, because on the surface, we see a deeply intimate portrait of a teenage boy who is dealing and navigating grief, depression, neglect, family abuse, but also most importantly, the lingering feeling of not belonging. And obviously, this is deeply popular, and also this is deeply relatable for many of us, not only for men, but also for women, especially girls growing up. But I think there is something that a lot of people are missing from this novel that I would say is essential and key to understand this story. Because while Holden is often described as sensitive, observant, and emotionally complex, I don't think we acknowledge the fact that he is also cruel, hypocritical, and emotionally manipulative. And most importantly, he actually excuses his own behavior. So today, I want to talk about both sides of the story, not only Holden's pain, but also the fact that he is using all this pain and just latching it onto other people. Just as a quick summary, the story follows Holden, a 16-year-old boy who has just been expelled from his boarding school again. This is the fourth time that he has been expelled from a boarding school, but this time happens just right before Christmas. So instead of waiting for his parents to come and collect him, what he decides is just travel alone to New York City, which is the city that he was born and he lives in with his parents, and just spend some days alone with or by himself. And as what you would expect, this whole journey is a mess. From the get-go, we see how Holden is using this trip or this vacation as a way to avoid something, as a way to get away from all the feelings and all the lingering emotions that he has with himself, right? We see how he's constantly wandering around the city, from hotels to bars to clubs to museums. He just tries to constantly be on the move because that is what his body is asking him to. He doesn't want to go into the void or into his own lingering feelings of despair and depression. We also see plenty social interactions that are just awkward from the start, right? He has encounters with strangers, with old friends that don't really like him, but also with people who are supposed to care about him, but they really don't. But apart from this deep sense of not belonging to this world or not belonging to this society, we see an underlying issue with Holden's character, and it's that he has an unresolved grief for the loss of his own brother Ali. Obviously, this has deeply affected him because he considered Ali as something pure, everything that was right in this world. He represented kindness, he represented attention, he also represented love towards him as an individual. So the fact that he has died, or that Ali has died, proves to him that everything that was good in this world does not exist anymore. So therefore, he falls onto this deep sense of not belonging, but also this deep sense of regret and disgust towards society. Now, don't get me wrong, I would be lying if I came here and I said that I did not find Holden relatable at all. Because at the end of the day, everyone has been 16 years old, has hated the world, and also has gone through puberty and has felt like they didn't belong anywhere, right? Like that is completely relatable. That is something that everyone experiences. And also I understand as well that he has an enormous amount of grief that he has to go through. So obviously I understand that in some sort of way his crash out is valid, obviously, period. But then I also think that we need to be slightly more critical with the character, because I think that there are a lot of underlying issues that we are not putting attention to. And the one most important issue that I see that no one talks about is the fact that Holden is a once neglected, now problem child. From the very beginning, it is very obvious that Holden is not just deeply misunderstood, he's also incredibly difficult. Like, he has gotten expelled from multiple boarding schools. You know how hard it is for you to get expelled from a boarding school, taking into account that your parents are paying for you to be there? It is so hard. Like, you have to fuck up real hard in many boarding schools for you to get kicked out. But also, he is failing modules, he is skipping classes, drinking underage, he is getting in trouble, like literally going on to fights. He is doing everything possible for him to get kicked out. So obviously I understand that he is going through stuff, obviously, but also he is being really, really difficult. And while it is easy for us to frame all this behavior as sensitivities or as rebellion, I think there is actually something bigger going on underneath. Because if we look at Holden's family, we see how this is an emotionally distant, almost neglectful family, right? We see how Holden, he is the middle child, right? So he is not near as successful as as his eldest brother, but also he is not the younger, precious child like Phoebe, right? So he is in the middle where he exists, he is noted, but he is not understood. He is just in the middle of nowhere, just hanging out around. And instead of expressing his feelings in a healthy way, he decides to become the problem child, right? And obviously, when I look at his behavior at the start of the book, I see that it is very obvious that everything that he is doing is to get the attention of his parents, right? Obviously, the failing modules, skipping classes, getting into trouble, and then getting kicked out of boarding school. All of these are attention seeking behaviors. We see these very often in educational psychology, right? But then everything that happens from when he goes to New York onwards, I don't think those are specifically attention seeking behaviors. I think they are more either self destructive, self harmful behaviors, or poor attempts to get the connection or the human connection that he desires so badly. So I think there is a very weird balance when it comes to the trip to New York. And this is why Holden's grief and depression becomes so obvious to me when he arrives to New York, right? Because every behavior that he does, everything that happens in New York is are clear signs of avoidance, right? We see how all the excessive drinking and all the excessive smoking that he does, or the way that he is constantly in adult spaces like clubs or bars, because he knows that he doesn't belong there, but he doesn't belong anywhere else anyways, so he just might as well have fun. Also, all the strange interactions with the strangers that are very oftentimes unsafe. And also, lastly, I would say all the interactions that he has with people that he's supposed to care about, like the girl that he likes, or all his old friends. All these interactions are very strange. They are very socially awkward awkward, and they are also very uninteresting, right? He just goes to the surface level of interactions. And all of these behaviors, to me, if they are isolated, they look like independent self-harm or self-destructive behaviors. But when you put them all together, to me, this is a very massive red flag for that I usually look for when it comes to obviously signs of depression, but most importantly for suicidal ideation. And this is the thing. I personally believe that Holden wanted to kill himself in some sort of way, right? All these behaviors are a clear sign that he does not care about his body. He does not care about the fact that either he lives or dies. And obviously, this shows that he is very clearly mentally unstable, right? Obviously, at the end of the day, all these behaviors are very erratic. They are aggressive at times, but most importantly, they show us that he is clearly in a depressive episode, right? Or he is going through some sort of mania. Obviously, we see how much money he's expending, but he is clearly trying to run away from this depression and from this void that he feels internally, all this turmoil, right? And whilst we understand that all these behaviors are rooted in these feelings that he has, that doesn't really excuse all the behaviors that he does and all the projection that he does towards people. And this is, in my opinion, the most important part of Holden's character, but also of the book overall. Because if we look at Holden's behavior, or if we look at the way Holden interacts with others, he is constantly critiquing them. Anyone that he meets, he's constantly critiquing them. Physically, emotionally, character-wise, he's constantly calling people out and just insulting people, right? Obviously, he has a massive inferiority complex, but that is not the point of this part. Because I think what Holden is over anything is that he is a hypocrite. Because if we look at his character, Holden, he is a wealthy guy. He is fucking loaded, right? His parents have all the money in the world. Well, not all the money in the world, but his parents are very, very comfortable, right? They live in Manhattan in a massive loft, right? So, and obviously they can afford boarding school for him. So obviously he is loaded, right? And he is critiquing his own classmates or his own roommate because he is loaded. Also, he talks about how his roommate is a disgusting human being because he doesn't take care of himself, or he is not hygienic, but also that he is a ladies' man and that he is a hoe, right? But also, he is the first one that tries to hire a prostitute in order to have sex, right? And also, he says how people are fake, how he's constantly surrounded by people who want to have just like normal average conversations, but he is doing the exact same thing with his old friends. So even though we see how he has all these thoughts and all these critiques about other people, he is doing the exact same thing. So in many ways, Holden is exactly what he hates, right? But I think that is intentional, and I think that tells us a lot more about the character and about ourselves than we actually think. When you put all of this together, his grief, his neglect, his erratic behavior, and his hypocrisy, we start seeing Holden not as a victim, but as someone who is actively perpetuating his own isolation, because he is seeking connection, but he's constantly rejecting it. Or he is looking for authenticity, but he is fake and phony himself, right? And this feels strangely modern. Because even though this novel was written in the 1950s, this is something that we see nowadays as well. There is something very familiar about a person with unresolved pain and trauma who, instead of keeping their own pain and try to solve it themselves, they project it towards others, towards family members or friends, even partners, or even people who try to get a meaningful connection with them. But this is where the conversation becomes broader. Because if we look into our society, it is not uncommon for people, especially men, to be told to keep these emotions down and to keep them for themselves rather than either exploring them or feeling them, right? Because at the end of the day, this society has taught many people, also again, especially many men, to keep their emotions, to not show them, and not so they don't show any weakness, but also to not resolve any unresolved traumas. Because many of you are taught to intellectualize your pain rather than actually feeling it. You are taught to dismiss it, to ignore it, or even to withdraw from it, right? It should not exist. But this is the thing. This pain doesn't just disappear. It actually leaks everywhere, especially in your relationships, right? This shows up as anger, as emotional distance, as refusal to be vulnerable, and even as defensiveness, right? But most importantly, it appears as resentment towards the other. This resentment not only appears towards your partner, for example, or your relationships, but it appears towards anyone, towards society, towards the world, right? Because you have all these pent up pain that you cannot get rid of, and then you blame everyone else for this pain, right? Because you're thinking, why are these people not feeling this pain? Or why am I the only one that has all these hurt and all these baggage? And also, this pain comes from all these other people that are living happily in the world, right? I'm the only one that has this pain, and you feel isolated and alienated. So therefore, all this resentment appears and shows up towards others, towards anyone that is around you. It leaks everywhere. Again, like this is like a wound, like a very deep wound that is bleeding onto others. And when you have all this pain and you have all this resentment, you cannot hold your emotions. So therefore, what you do is you place your emotions towards or onto others, right? You are expecting comfort when you yourself are not comforting. You are expecting vulnerability from others and honesty from others when you are not comfortable or honest yourself. You have all these expectations for people in order to prove you that they won't hurt you, that they won't cause you any more pain, but you are not giving your end of the stick, right? You are not doing all these things that would also cause someone to be comfortable, to be vulnerable with you. So you are expecting heaven, but actually you're not giving anything, you're giving crumbs. And this is the clearest example of wanting connection, but instead sabotaging all your relationships, right? And if we look back into what we said earlier, mentioning that many people, especially men, are taught to hide their emotions, when we look at the counterparts, meaning who are the ones who are dealing or suffering with all this projected pain, we see that the short end of the stick is usually women, right? Especially in heterosexual relationships. Because if we look into societal expectations or social expectations, we see how women are usually taught to deal with these emotions, right? To deal with all these pain, with all this baggage that other people or our relationships or our partners would have. We are taught to be understanding, to be more patient, to be willing to be vulnerable without the other person being vulnerable back. And we have seen plenty of examples in here, not only in media, but also in real life. These are very obvious and very clear situations that we see in our day-to-day basis. You're probably thinking of a real life example right now in your life. So what you end up with is a dynamic that is unbalanced, because you have one individual who is dealing with their own pain, with their own baggage, and also with their partners, and then someone who refuses to be vulnerable, someone who refuses to deal with their own intentions and their own baggage. And when we look back into the book, we see how Holden is doing the exact same thing, right? He obviously has a lot of trauma. He has a lot of grief, he has a lot of baggage and depression. So obviously he refuses to deal with it himself. He refuses to acknowledge that he has this pain. So what he does is bleed this pain onto everyone else, onto Sally with his own aggressiveness and abuse, onto his old friends, in order to make like very tiny and very over the top connections so he doesn't feel lonely, but also all these attention seeking behaviors that give him some sort of attention in some sort of way, but actually doesn't give him any sort of meaningful connections. At the end of the day, The Catcher in the Rye by Salinger is not just a coming of age story. It's a story about what happens when pain is left unprocessed. And also when someone's pain is so intense and someone is so consumed by their suffering that they begin to see the world and everyone else around it as the problem. And what makes this book so relatable as well is the fact that it shows us something that we are notoriously bad at, because we are great at knowing that we are in pain or at finding out what pain is, but we are not great at asking people what do they do with this pain. Do they sit on it? Do they journal it? Do they process it? Or do they actually just keep it to themselves until one day it inevitably explodes and it just affects everyone else? Because we can understand people's pain, we can feel for other people's pain, we can also understand people's behavior. What we cannot do is excuse them. And also, at the end of the day, it is our own responsibility as individuals to actually process our own pain. We cannot expect people to deal with this, with our own pain and theirs as well. Everyone has pain, everyone has baggage. It is our responsibility to take care of it ourselves. That's all for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you have read The Catcher in the Rye, I would love to know your opinion about it. So please put down in the comments, or let me know in the comments what you thought about the book, if you liked it, if you didn't, or if you think this book is about something else that I have completely missed. I would love to know it all. Please let me know. Or also, you can follow me on my social media and you can tell me there directly as well what you think. I post there every day and I post a lot more content, so just please feel free to follow me there as well. But yeah, that's all for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I will see you soon. Bye, guys.